Look, I'm not saying humans are dangerous. I'm saying we categorize them wrong, and by the time I figured it out, one of them had already changed galactic warfare doctrine with a rifle she built in her garage. My name is Vexthar, Turonian Imperial Guard, 43 cycles of military instruction, and I've seen every species in the Galactic Defense Force make a fool of themselves at least once. It's my job. Tactical analyst, they call it, professional observer of failure more accurately. The firing range on Station Orpheus smelled like ionized metal and broken confidence. Standard qualification day. 18 recruits from 7 different species, all convinced their natural advantages would translate to marksmanship excellence. They were wrong. They were always wrong. I stood in the observation booth with my clawed appendages crossed, watching a Velcron trooper, all forearms enhanced optical implants. The works managed 6 hits out of 12 targets. Acceptable by GDF standards. Pathetic by any measure that mattered. Instructor Gormath, a triple-jointed Quellen with the patience of a dying star, checked his datapad and barked the next name. Ashford, you're up. That's when she walked in. The human female stood perhaps 5'7" in your measurements, maybe 130 pounds, if you counted her equipment. Her hair, dark auburn pulled into what humans call a ponytail, swayed as she approached the firing line. Standard issue fatigues, standard issue boots. Nothing about her physical presence suggested anything remotely exceptional. What she carried, though. The weapon looked like someone had attached a starship's targeting array to a standard kinetic rifle, then decided it needed more. The scope alone probably cost more than my ceremonial armor oversized multi-lens, with adjustment turrets the size of my smallest claw. A bipod extended from the front, its legs featuring micro-adjustments in 0.1 millimeter increments custom milled. The barrel's carbon fiber wrap showed heat stress patterns at 6-inch intervals. She'd fired this thing thousands of times, in the exact same positions. Recruit Zick sitting beside me let out a whistling laugh through his breathing slits. Look at the human's toy. Did she raid the armory and take everything not bolted down? Thexkal, a 4-armed Rogelian shock trooper, known for his lack of tact and abundance of ego, grunted. Compensation. Weak species always bring the fanciest equipment, as if attachments make up for inferior biology. I said nothing, but my mandibles clicked in what I'll admit was amusement. The human name tag read K. Ashford began setting up her position with deliberate precision. She deployed the bipod, adjusted it, readjusted it, checked it again with a small level device. Then she pulled out an electronic rangefinder and aimed it downrange. Then a worn notebook pages filled with handwritten calculations. Gormath's patience evaporated. This is a timed qualification, recruit. You have 4 minutes to engage 12 targets at varying distances. Begin when ready. Ashford didn't rush, didn't even acknowledge the comment. She settled behind her weapon with the kind of deliberation that would get you killed in actual combat. Her body position looked wrong. To my eyes, humans lacked the natural stability of a proper 4-legged stance, but she seemed to melt into the floor, became part of it. Thexkal leaned toward me. 20 credits says she hits less than half. 30 says she requests a restart after the first miss. Zick added, his skin shifting from amused orange to confident yellow. I studied the human more carefully. Something about her stillness felt off, not wrong, different. Her breathing was too controlled, like she was suppressing something, and her hands just before she settled completely trembled, barely perceptible, but there. Then they steadied, absolutely, completely. Ready, she announced. Her voice was calm, flat. The first target appeared at 200 meters, a standard pop-up silhouette active for 3 seconds. Easy. The sound that erupted from her rifle was unexpected. Not the sharp crack of standard-issue kinetic weapons, a deeper report, a punch of air that I felt in my chest cavity. The target registered a hit before my secondary eyelids could fully blink. Center mass, 0.3 minutes of angle from absolute perfect. Target 2 appeared immediately. 300 meters angled position. The rifle barked again. Hit. Thexkal's whistling stopped. Targets 3 through 5 appeared simultaneously at varying distances, 153, 2400 meters. Standard chaos testing. Most recruits panic, start spraying rounds. Ashford's movements became fluid. Acquire. Breathe that 2 controlled pause. Press. Cycle the bolt with mechanical precision. Acquire again. 3 shots. 3 hits. All center mass. My tactical computer flagged the data. Precision exceeds standard infantry parameters by 340%. Atmospheric compensation detected. Manual wind reading confirmed. I leaned forward despite myself. Target 6 appeared at 500 meters, partially obscured behind a barrier. Only a small portion of the silhouette showed maybe 30% of a full target. The rifle cracked. The barrier section covering the target registered the impact. Perfect placement through the gap. Hit. Targets 7, 8, 9. Distances pushing 600 meters now. Some targets appearing for only 2 seconds. Combat speed. Crack. 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 Hit. 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 Zick's breathing slits flared. His skin had progressed past confident yellow into confused green. Lucky shots. Has to be. But Thexkal's secondary arms had stopped their dismissive gesturing. He was watching now. Really watching. Target 10 flashed onto the range at 700 meters, a distance where atmospheric conditions, projectile drop Coriolis effect, and a dozen other factors turned shooting into advanced mathematics, where most recruits with standard equipment gave up and just aimed center mass hoping for the best. Ashford consulted nothing, no computer, no heads-up display, no targeting assistance. She made a minute adjustment to her scope. I counted the clicks. 4 up 2 right settled into her position and fired. 2.1 seconds of flight time. Through my enhanced optical implants, the round arced through space, transonic transition at 760 meters, crossing wind bands that my station's sensors registered as 8 to 12 miles per hour with 40% variance. The target registered a hit in the primary scoring zone. Impossible, Zick said flatly. The wind variance alone at that distance. She's compensating, I heard myself say. Look at her barrel position before each shot. Manual hold-off. She's reading mirage patterns. Gormath had stopped pretending to review other recruits. He stared at his datapad like it had personally offended him. Target 11 appeared at 800 meters. Moving laterally, combat speed. This target was designed to humble overconfident recruits, to teach them the limitations of standard infantry weapons and their own abilities. Most shooters never even got this far in the qualification. Ashford tracked the movement. Her rifle followed smoothly, almost lazily. For a moment that stretched far too long, she didn't fire. The target continued its lateral travel, eating up her available engagement time. Then in the half-second before the target would have disappeared, she pressed the trigger. My implants tracked the projectile's trace. The round seemed to lead the target, impossibly arcing through empty space. Except that space wasn't empty. Not for long. The target moved into it with mechanical precision. The impact registered as a perfect central nervous system hit. Silence filled the observation booth, the kind that accompanies witnessing something that violates your understanding of possible. Target 12 appeared, 900 meters, elevated position, wind gusts visible through the atmospheric sensors. Target exposure time, 2.5 seconds. Ashford chambered her final round with the same mechanical precision. Her eyes settled behind that oversized scope. Her breathing slowed until I wondered if she'd achieved some form of metabolic suspension. The rifle fired. For an agonizing moment, nothing. At that distance, flight time was perceptible. 2.3 seconds where physics and ballistics engaged in their eternal dance. Then the target registered. Not just a hit, a perfect absolute center mass impact that the computer system flagged as precision shot extreme conditions. 12 for 12. Perfect score. 0 misses. Ashford stood, cleared her weapon with practiced efficiency, safed it, removed the magazine, locked the bolt back, then turned toward the observation booth where Gormath stood with his jaw hanging open in what I recognized as undignified shock. Qualification complete, sir. Her tone suggested this was the most normal thing in the universe. Except her face. Her face was wrong. No smile, no pride, no satisfaction, just blank. Eyes focused somewhere past Gormath, past the range, past the present moment entirely. Then she did something that made my tactical analysis protocols stall completely. She touched the rifle stock, barely a brush of fingers. and whispered so quietly my enhanced auditory sensors almost missed it 2 words. For you, Dad. Gormath stared at his tablet, then at Ashford, then back at his tablet like it might suddenly make sense if he just looked harder. This, this must be a system error. Nobody shoots perfect on the advanced qualification. Even our top-rated Velcron sharpshooters average 9 out of 12. Would you like me to run it again, sir? Ashford asked. Her voice remained flat, empty. I have plenty of ammunition. That won't be necessary. A new voice, we all turned. Chief Weapons Instructor Carson stood in the observation booth doorway. A Caesarian war hero with 600 combat missions documented 17 major engagements, 4 separate wars. His scaled hide bore scars from weapon systems that didn't exist anymore. His optical implant glowed with tactical data streams, processing information faster than most species could think. Carson didn't appear for routine qualifications. He descended to the range floor with measured steps, his attention fixed entirely on Ashford and her weapon. When he reached her position, he stopped, studied the rifle like it was a historical artifact. May I? Ashford hesitated. Something flickered across her features, possession, protection, something fierce and private. Then she carefully engaged the safety, removed the magazine, verified the chamber was clear, and handed the rifle to Carson. He examined it with reverence. His clawed digits traced over the modifications, the custom components, the worn finish that spoke of countless hours of use, the barrel's heat stress patterns, the scope's adjustment turrets, their knurling worn smooth in specific places from repeated use. This is a precision instrument, he said quietly. Not standard issue, not even close. Custom barrel Krieger match grade if I'm reading this correctly. 6.5 Creedmoor. The action is surgeon built. The stock is Macmillan bedded and reinforced. The scope, he paused at the scope, rotated it slightly to catch the light. Schmidt and Bender, custom turrets, machined for a specific ballistic profile. He looked at Ashford. Where did you acquire this? I built it, sir. A pause. Well assembled it from various components. Krieger barrel custom surgeon, action Macmillan stock bedded for my position. The scopes, a Schmidt and Bender, I had the turrets machined for my specific ballistics. Another pause. Shorter, tighter. My father helped with the initial build. Carson's optical implant cycled through several colors. Processing, analyzing. You built this yourself. A human civilian had access to these components. Something almost like a smile touched Ashford's lips. Not quite. A ghost of one. Humans have a certain relationship with firearms, sir. Where I come from, precision rifle shooting is a discipline, a sport for some, a lifestyle for others. I've been doing this since I was 12. 12 cycles, Thexkel interjected from the booth, his usual arrogance cracking into disbelief. Your species allows juveniles access to weapons. 12 years, Ashford corrected without looking at him. And yes, supervised at first, obviously. My father was a competitive shooter. Olympic level. He taught me that shooting isn't about the weapon. It's about understanding physics, reading the environment, controlling your own biology. The rifle is just the tool that expresses that knowledge. Carson handed the weapon back to her with noticeably more respect than he showed most recruits. How many rounds have you put through this particular rifle? Through this build about 47,000. Through various rifles over my lifetime, she paused, calculated. North of 300,000 rounds, maybe more. I stopped counting after the first 100,000. The numbers meant nothing to Zick or the other recruits, but I knew I'd served with enough military specialists to understand what those numbers represented. That wasn't casual hobby shooting. That was professional level dedication. That was someone who had spent years, perhaps a decade or more, perfecting a single skill to an almost obsessive degree. Your grouping's at 700 meters, Carson continued. What's your average? Depends on conditions. On a calm day, half-minute of angle. So about 3.5 inches. On a windy day, maybe 0.75 MOA, if I read it right. 5 inches if I'm having a bad day. More silence. Thexkal's secondary arms had begun an involuntary tremor, a Rigelian stress response. Carson's optical implant cycled through several more colors. Most military sharpshooters in the Galactic Defense Force consider 1 minute of angle at 500 meters to be acceptable combat accuracy. Different standards, sir. Ashford shrugged slightly. In precision rifle competition, back home 1 MOA is beginner level. The top shooters are running quarter MOA guns and reading wind down to half-mile-per-hour variations. When your competition is decided by fractions of an inch at 1,000 yards, you either get very good or you go broke buying ammunition while getting humiliated. She said this without arrogance, just stating facts, which somehow made it worse. Or better, I wasn't entirely sure which. Gormith finally found his voice. You're assigned to standard infantry training. Your file says nothing about specialist qualifications. Because I don't have any, sir. Not military ones anyway. I have a few civilian competition wins, some instructor certifications. But I joined GTDF as a basic recruit. Figured I'd let my performance speak for itself rather than making claims I couldn't back up. Carson's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as Caesarian approval. A wise approach. Too many recruits arrive with inflated credentials and deflated abilities. He paused. His optical implant focused on Ashford with unsettling intensity. Tell me, recruit Ashford, have you ever engaged a living target? The question hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. Ashford's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, a slight stiffening, a barely perceptible tension. No, sir, she said quietly. Paper, steel, and reactive targets only. I've never pointed a weapon at anything I wasn't willing to destroy, and I've only been willing to destroy inanimate objects. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes for just a moment flickered to the rifle in her hands, then away. The discipline I learned was about precision and control, not killing. Good, Carson said, nodding slowly. Then you understand the weight of what you can do. That's more important than the skill itself. He turned to Gormith. I'm appropriating this recruit. She will be reassigned to the Advanced Marksmanship Program pending full evaluation. Sir, Gormith protested weakly, the Advanced Program is for candidates with specialist training. She's only been here 3 weeks, and in 3 weeks she has demonstrated more fundamental proficiency than most of your graduates achieve in 6 months. Carson's tone left no room for argument. I will handle the administrative details. Ashford, report to Range 7 tomorrow at 0600. Bring your rifle and enough ammunition for a full diagnostic session. We will see exactly what you are capable of. Yes, sir. As Ashford collected her equipment and headed toward the exit, that absurdly equipped rifle slung across her back, with casual familiarity, Zick turned to me with all 3 of his eyes wide. Did that actually just happen? It did, I confirmed. My tactical processors were still analyzing what I'd witnessed. Something didn't add up. The skill was undeniable, exceptional, beyond anything I'd seen from a basic recruit. But that reaction, that emptiness in her eyes, that whispered comment to her rifle, I pulled up Ashford's personnel file on my datapad. Standard information, age 24 Earth years, civilian background, competition shooter since age 12, father Marcus, no Grant Ashford, Olympic shooting coach. Deceased, I expanded the file. Restricted section, required tactical analyst clearance. The encrypted note appeared. Psychological evaluation required. Family trauma incident. Subject cleared for service, but recommend monitoring for PTSD triggers. Details sealed per human privacy protocols. Below that, partially redacted Father Grant Ashford, deceased 8 years ago, training accident. Brother Ethan Ashford, deceased 6 years ago, suicide. Connection to father's death, suspected but unconfirmed. I closed the file, looked at the range where Ashford had just demonstrated perfection, thought about that whisper. For you, Dad. Vexthar, Zick's voice pulled me back. You look troubled. Do I? I stared at the doorway where Ashford had disappeared. Just processing. Something about this doesn't fit. Vexcall snorted. What's to process? She's good with a rifle. Probably spent her whole life doing nothing else. Humans are supposed to be good at obsessing over pointless things. Is it pointless? I heard myself ask. One human civilian with a rifle 47,000 practice rounds through that specific weapon, 300,000 rounds lifetime experience. She just outperformed our best military specialists using equipment she assembled herself. So what? Thexcal challenged. She's one recruit, an anomaly. Maybe, I said quietly. Or maybe we haven't been paying attention to the right things. That night, long past my normal rest cycle, I found myself in my quarters accessing the human cultural database. Something I confess I'd never bothered to do before. If one human civilian could demonstrate such frightening competence, what else had we been missing about this species? What I found kept me awake. Humans, it turned out, had a very special relationship with projectile weapons, a relationship spanning thousands of their years. They'd taken the simple concept of throwing objects at enemies and refined it into art, into science, into cultural phenomenon. They had competitions, the Precision Rifle Series, National Rifle League, F-class matches, events where civilians spent thousands of their currency units to achieve levels of marksmanship that exceeded most military standards across the galaxy. And they did this for fun, voluntarily, for recreation, because they enjoyed the challenge. The pursuit of perfection. What kind of species does that? I pulled up competition footage. Watched humans engage targets at distances exceeding 2,000 meters. Watch them calculate solutions accounting for wind temperature, barometric pressure, even the curvature of their planet. Watch them do this not for military purposes, not for survival, for points, for trophies, for personal satisfaction. Then I made the mistake of running demographic analysis. Earth, population 8 billion humans. If even 0.1% had skills comparable to Ashford, and the competition data suggested far more than that, we were looking at 8 million potential specialists. 8 million individuals who'd spent years refining their ability to place projectiles with precision, who treated killing at long range as a solvable problem rather than an impressive feat. I thought about Carson's comment, about understanding the weight of what you can do. Then I thought about what he'd whispered to Gormath as Ashford left the range. I'd heard it, enhanced auditory sensors, crystal clear. Only snipers move like that. Only people who've spent years behind a scope understand stillness that way. The humans have been breeding specialists without even trying, just through their cultural obsessions. I pulled up the security footage from Ashford's assigned quarters, told myself it was tactical analysis, threat assessment, the kind of monitoring recommended in her file. The feed showed her alone, sitting on her bunk, the rifle disassembled in front of her in perfect order, each component laid out with geometric precision. She was cleaning it, not the quick field strip and wipe most recruits did, a full meticulous breakdown. Every part examined, every surface attended to. It looked like meditation, like ritual. Her hands moved with practiced certainty, no hesitation. This was muscle memory built over years, thousands of repetitions. Then something fell from the rifle case, a photograph, small, worn at the edges from handling. Ashford picked it up, stared at it for a long moment. Even through the security feed's limited resolution, I could see her hands start to tremble. She set the photo down carefully, continued cleaning, but her shoulders had started to shake. I enhanced the image, zoomed in on the photograph. 3 humans, Ashford younger, maybe 16, standing between 2 males. One adult, one child. The adult had his arm around her shoulders. The child grinned at the camera, holding what looked like a smaller rifle, a training weapon. All 3 wore matching shirts, some kind of competition or event. The adult male's face had been crossed out with red marker, heavy lines, angry strokes. The child's face was circled, also in red, and written in shaky handwriting beside the child, "I'm sorry." Ashford reassembled her rifle, set it aside, picked up the photograph again, and cried, silently, shoulders shaking, no sound, just tears. Then she carefully placed the photograph back in the rifle case, wiped her face, lay down on her bunk, and stared at the ceiling until her scheduled wake time 6 hours later. She never slept. I closed the feed, sat in darkness in my own quarters processing what I'd seen. The skill made sense now. 47,000 rounds through one rifle, 300,000 lifetime. Starting at age 12, Olympic-level coaching from her father. But the emptiness, the whispered comment, The photograph with the crossed-out faces and the apology, the crying, the not sleeping. She wasn't just skilled, she was haunted. And tomorrow, Carson was going to push her to her breaking point, to find her limitations. I had a feeling we were all about to learn something about humans that our databases had failed to mention. They don't just turn their limitations into specializations. They turn their grief into precision. Every trigger, pull an apology. Every perfect shot a penance for something they'd done or failed to do. Ashford had said it herself. She'd never pointed a weapon at anything she wasn't willing to destroy. I wondered what she'd destroyed, what had taken her father and brother from her, what had put that emptiness in her eyes and that desperate, controlled perfection in every movement. Tomorrow at Range 7, we'd find out. I just hoped the answer wouldn't break her completely. Range 7 existed in a different reality than standard qualification courses. I arrived at 0530, 30 minutes early, called it professional curiosity, called it due diligence. Honestly couldn't explain my own motivations, which troubled me more than I cared to admit. The range stretched across 12 kilometers of variable terrain. Atmospheric simulators, elevation changes, environmental hazards that made recruits question their career choices. This was where the Galactic Defense Force trained precision specialists, the shooters who could terminate hostile targets before conventional forces knew combat had begun. Chief Instructor Carson stood at the control station manipulating holographic displays showing the entire range layout. Noticed my approach but said nothing, just gestured toward an observation position. "You're early, Vexther." "I wish to observe, sir, if permitted." Permitted. His optical implant tracked multiple data streams simultaneously. "In fact, I would value your tactical assessment. You have combat experience in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Tell me what you see." What I saw moments later was Ashford arriving with her rifle case and a backpack that probably weighed half her body mass. Standard utility fatigues, hair pulled back in that same ponytail. Expression focused, but not tense. Controlled. Too controlled. "Recruit Ashford reporting as ordered, sir." Oh, she snapped a salute that would have satisfied the most particular drill instructor. Carson returned it. "At ease. Today we determine if yesterday was exceptional performance or standard capability. You will engage targets at distances from 300 to 1,500 meters under various conditions. Limited time to calculate solutions. Scenarios designed to break concentration and test decision-making under pressure." Questions? "No, sir. Ready when you are." Carson pulled up the first scenario. Target Alpha, distance 420 meters. Wind variable gusting southwest at 8 to 15 miles per hour. Target exposure 5 seconds. Engage when ready. Ashford dropped into position with that same unsettling fluidity, deployed her bipod, settled behind the scope, chambered around. For 3 seconds, she remained absolutely motionless, then fired. The target registered a hit in the primary elimination zone. Center mass slightly left to compensate for wind drift. Time from position to shot 3.2 seconds, Carson noted. Acceptable. Target beta, distance 670 meters. Wind calm, target partially obscured behind barrier. Only head and upper torso visible. Assess and engage. Ashford adjusted her position fractionally. Took 4 seconds this time. Another perfect hit. Target gamma, distance 940 meters. Crosswind from east 12 miles per hour sustained. Target moving left to right at walking speed. You have 8 seconds. Her breathing pattern changed. She settled deeper into her position, tracking the target's movement with mechanical precision. 6 seconds elapsed. 7. At 7.5 seconds, her rifle barked. The target registered a hit just as it reached the edge of its travel zone. Adequate. Carson's tone suggested he meant considerably more than adequate. Now we increase difficulty. Multiple targets will appear simultaneously at various distances. You will prioritize based on threat assessment protocols. Targets designated red or high value, yellow or medium, blue or low. Your ammunition is limited. Choose wisely. The range erupted with targets, 12 of them scattered across 1,000 meters of varied terrain. Ashford didn't panic, didn't rush. She scanned, calculated, then began engaging targets in a sequence that took me a moment to understand. She started with the furthest red target, 1,300 meters, the most difficult shot, the one most shooters would save for last if they attempted it at all. Fired, cycled the bolt, immediately acquired the second red target at 900 meters. Fired again. The third red target appeared at only 400 meters, almost insultingly close after the previous shots. She put a round through it in less than 2 seconds, then methodically worked through the yellow targets, prioritizing by distance and exposure time rather than simple proximity. The blue targets she ignored completely until all higher value threats were eliminated. Total time 41 seconds. Total rounds expended 9. Total hits 9. You left 3 targets active, Carson observed. Low value targets at close range, sir. Ashford's voice remained flat, empty. In a real scenario, conventional infantry could handle those threats. My limited ammunition is better preserved for targets they cannot effectively engage. Resource management seemed more important than achieving a perfect score. Carson's mandibles clicked rapidly, extreme approval in Caesarian body language. Correct assessment. Most recruits empty their weapons trying to hit everything, then find themselves useless when actual high-value targets appear. You think like an asset, not a soldier. Good. He paused, manipulated his controls to configure something new. Now we test your limitations. I am going to make you fail, Ashford. I need to know where your breaking point exists. Understood? Yes, sir, I would expect nothing less. What followed was brutal. Carson threw scenarios at Ashford that would have overwhelmed veteran shooters. Targets at extreme distances with minimal exposure time. Environmental conditions that bordered on impossible. Situations requiring split-second decisions where every choice had consequences. She handled each one with the same methodical approach, sometimes succeeding brilliantly, occasionally failing, but always analyzing, always adapting, always mechanical, always empty. For 90 minutes straight, I observed every detail, position after position, her breathing slowed to that too-controlled rhythm. Her hands trembled for just a moment before steadying, every single time. You shoot like a machine, Ashford, Carson said after her 47th consecutive engagement. Efficient, precise, technically flawless. He paused. Where's the human? For the first time since the evaluation began, something flickered across Ashford's face. Brief, quickly suppressed. Machines don't feel regret, sir. Her voice remained steady. Lucky them. Carson's optical implant cycled through several colors, processing that response. Then he pulled up a new scenario. Scenario 7, urban environment. Hostile forces engaged with friendly units. Your mission is to provide precision fire support, eliminate high-value targets while avoiding civilian casualties. Environmental data will be limited. You must rely on observation and judgment. Scenario begins in 5 seconds. The range transformed. Holographic buildings appeared, movement indicators, audio feeds. The sound hit first. Explosions, weapon fire, shouting in languages I didn't recognize, and screaming. A child, high-pitched, terrified. The kind of sound that bypasses rational thought and hits something primal. I saw Ashford's entire body go rigid. Target appeared, 1,200 meters. Clear shot, high-value designation. She acquired it, settled. Her breathing hitched. The child screamed again in the audio feed. Ashford's hands started shaking. Not the brief tremor I'd seen before, violent shaking. Her breath came in rapid gasps. The target disappeared. 5-second window expired. She didn't fire. Target 2, Carson announced. Another target appeared, 1,100 meters. Ashford tried to acquire it. Her scope wandered. Her breathing accelerated. Hyperventilating now, she fired. The shot went wide. 6 feet left of target. The worst miss I'd ever seen from her. Cease fire, Carson's voice cut through the audio simulation. The holographic environment disappeared. Silence returned. Ashford dropped her head, gasping for air, hands shaking so violently she couldn't hold the rifle steady. She set it down carefully, precisely. Even in the middle of what looked like a panic attack, she treated the weapon with reverence. What happened, recruit? Ashford didn't answer immediately, just focused on breathing, in through nose, out through mouth, fighting for control. Finally, the sound, it reminded me, I reminded you of what? Long silence. So long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she looked up at Carson. Her eyes were wet. My brother, sir. Training accident. 8 years ago, I was the one holding the rifle. The words came out mechanical, rehearsed, like she'd said them before, to therapists, to evaluators, to herself in mirrors at 3 in the morning. My father was an Olympic shooting coach. He taught me from age 12, taught me that shooting was about discipline, about understanding physics and reading environments and controlling your biology. Made me memorize 500 ballistic tables before I turned 14. She paused, swallowed hard. When I was 16, he thought I was ready to teach, to pass it on. My brother Ethan was 12, eager, wanted to shoot like me, like Dad. I was supervising his practice session. Dad was downrange checking targets. We'd done it 100 times before. Her hands clenched into fists, released, clenched again. Ethan picked up my rifle. I'd set it down. Thought I'd cleared it. I was wrong. He pulled the trigger. Just playing. Being a kid. The rifle discharged. The bullet struck my father at 200 yards, center mass. Perfect shot. The last 2 words came out bitter. Poisoned. He died 3 days later. Complications from the wound, infection. They tried everything. She looked down at her hands. Ethan blamed himself. Wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't talk to anyone. 2 years later, 6 years ago now, he hung himself in his bedroom. 14 years old. Left a note. 3 words, I killed Dad. I felt my breathing slits constrict. A Turonian physiological response to hearing something that violated fundamental concepts of right and wrong. 8 years I've been shooting to earn forgiveness I'll never get, Ashford continued. Her voice had gone completely flat now. Dead. 6 years I've been carrying my brother's guilt on top of my own. Because I taught him. I handed him the rifle. I failed to clear it. I killed them both. She picked up her rifle. Held it like it was made of something precious and terrible. Every round I fire is penance, sir. Every perfect shot is proof that I learned from my mistake, that I'll never fail to clear a weapon again, never fail to control the environment, never fail to account for every variable. Her eyes met Carson's. But put a child's scream in the audio feed and all I hear is Ethan. All I see is my father falling. And I just, she trailed off. Carson said nothing for a long moment. His optical implant had stopped cycling colors, fixed on steady blue. Processing, analyzing. Finally, you're not cleared for combat duty, Ashford. She nodded, expected this. But I'm not dismissing you either. Her head snapped up. You have skills that would make you a legend in most military units. Skills developed through dedication that borders on obsession. But more importantly, you understand the weight of what you can do, the cost of failure. That makes you more qualified than 90% of the shooters I've trained. He paused. We just need to find the right role for you. One that doesn't involve. The range intercom crackled to life. Chief Instructor Carson, priority alert. We have a Code 7 situation developing. All senior staff to tactical operations immediately. Carson's expression shifted. Continue practicing, Ashford. I'll return when I can. He left. Ashford sat alone on the range floor, rifle beside her, head in her hands. I remained in the observation booth, watching. Should have left, should have given her privacy. But something made me stay. After 10 minutes, she stood, picked up her rifle, walked to her equipment bag. That's when Thexcal appeared. I hadn't known he was there. Watching, listening. The Regellian approached Carson's control station, looked around to ensure he was alone. Then he pulled up Ashford's next scheduled scenario on the system and started making adjustments. Through the observation window, Thexcal modified the target parameters. Changed wind data, altered the scope calibration settings remotely. The advanced range had that capability for training purposes. To simulate equipment failures, he adjusted the turrets, 2.3 minutes of angle right, 1.7 minutes of angle down. At 1,000 meters, that meant 24 inches horizontal error, 18 inches vertical. Then he smiled. That particular Rigelian expression that meant satisfaction at someone else's impending failure. He left. I should have stopped him, should have reported it immediately, but I didn't. I wanted to see what would happen. Wanted to see if Ashford was really as good as she appeared, or if yesterday's performance had been luck, if her psychological fragility would extend to technical challenges. Professional curiosity, I told myself. It was a lie. I was testing her. Just like Carson. Just like Thexcal, albeit with different motivations. Ashford returned to the line, checked her rifle, loaded ammunition, then accessed the range control system to pull up her next scheduled scenario. Target appeared on the display. 1,600 meters, moving platform, 15 mile per hour crosswind, 2-second engagement window. She settled into position. Breathing slowed, hands tremored, then steadied. She acquired the target through her scope, then stopped. Set the rifle down, walked to the scope, ran her fingers along the adjustment turrets, clicked them, counted. Her expression changed. She walked back to the range control system, pulled up the equipment diagnostic, checked the scope's last calibration timestamp. It read modified 4 minutes ago. She looked toward the observation booth, couldn't see me through the one-way glass, but I felt like she was looking directly at me anyway. Then she returned to her position, called up to the control system. Permission to continue with current equipment settings, sir. No one answered. Carson was gone. She took that as permission. I can compensate, she said to herself, or to her father, or to her brother, or to the rifle. I wasn't sure anymore. Target appeared, 1,600 meters, moving laterally, wind gusting 15 miles per hour with a variance. 2 seconds to engage. Ashford settled behind her rifle. I pulled up the tactical analysis on my datapad. Scope sabotage would push her point of impact 24 inches right, 18 inches down at this distance. Wind would add another drift factor. Moving target required lead time. All of it happening in 2 seconds. She'd need to calculate the scope error, the wind, the target lead, the Coriolis effect, the atmospheric density, temperature variations, barometric pressure, in her head without computer assistance, in less than 2 seconds. My tactical sensors tracked every micro movement. She didn't move for the first second, just breathed. That 2-controlled rhythm. Then her entire body settled, became part of the earth, and she fired. The round left the barrel at 2,700 feet per second. Flight time 2.1 seconds. Through my enhanced optical implants, the projectile arced through space, crossing wind bands, compensating for drop, leading the target. The bullet trajectory looked wrong, too far left, too high. Then the target moved into its path. Impact registered dead center. Perfect hit. Ashford stood, cleared her weapon, then looked directly at the observation booth. I don't need the scope markings, sir, she said to empty air. I have the math. Dad made me memorize 500 ballistic tables before I was 14. The scope just makes it easier, but I can do it without. She paused. I can do anything without, as long as I have the math, as long as I have the discipline he taught me, as long as I remember everything he gave me before I took it all away. Her voice broke on the last word. I left the observation booth, descended to the range floor. She saw me approaching. Her expression cycled through surprise recognition, then resignation. How long were you watching? The whole time. She nodded. Then you saw Thex call. I saw. Why didn't you stop him? I considered lying, decided against it. I wanted to see what you would do. And you proved that your skill isn't dependent on equipment, that you've internalized the mathematics to a degree I've never seen, that your father taught you something that goes beyond tools and technology. I paused. You also proved that you're carrying a weight that will eventually crush you if you don't find a way to set it down. Ashford looked at her rifle. This weight is all I have left of them. If I set it down, they disappear completely. No, I said quietly. If you set it down, you might finally be able to see them clearly, instead of through a scope. Before she could respond, Carson's voice came over the intercom. All personnel to briefing room 7. Immediate. Code 7 emergency requires specialist response. We looked at each other. What's code 7? Ashford asked. Hostage situation, I replied. Usually means someone needs to die very precisely, very quickly, from very far away. I watched realization dawn on her face. Come on, I said. Carson will want both of us there. As we walked toward the briefing room, I couldn't shake the image of her making that impossible shot, compensating for sabotage, calculating everything in her head. Carson had whispered it yesterday. I'd heard him clearly. Only snipers move like that. He was right, but he was also wrong. It wasn't just snipers. It was ghosts. People haunted by their own precision, by their own deadly competence, by the knowledge that they could kill perfectly, and had, even if only by accident. Tomorrow Ashford might have to kill intentionally, and I had no idea if that would save her or destroy her completely. Briefing Room 7 was chaos organized into tactical displays. 12 holographic screens showed different angles of a civilian transport vessel drifting 47 kilometers from Station Orpheus. Hull integrity compromised, life support functional but degraded, and somewhere inside that damaged ship, 12 hostages sat in a command deck with weapons pointed at their heads. Commander Tyrell, a 6-armed Nexian with 300 combat operations to her name, stood at the central display. Her voice cut through the murmur of assembled personnel. Situation: the transport vessel Meridian Dawn was intercepted 6 hours ago by what we initially assessed as salvage pirates. We were wrong. This is a coordinated hostage for ransom operation. They're demanding 50 million credits in safe passage to neutral space. She pulled up thermal imaging of the ship's interior. 12 hostages, 7 adults, 3 children, 2 elderly, all confined to the command deck with 4 confirmed hostiles. Leader is a Cressian mercenary named Vex Shah, former GDF, dishonorably discharged, knows our protocols. Carson leaned forward. Boarding options. Limited. Tyrell highlighted the command deck. Single access point, heavily monitored. They've rigged proximity explosives on the door. First team member through diesel. So does everyone in the room. We board, they detonate. We wait, they start executing hostages in 4 hours. Negotiation. Attempted. They killed the ship's captain 20 minutes ago. Sent us the video. They're serious. Silence settled over the room, the kind that accompanies impossible choices. Then Tyrell rotated the ship model, highlighted a viewport on the command deck. There's one option. The command deck has a 40 by 60 centimeter viewport, ballistic rated composite 18 millimeters thick. Our scans show the hostiles are using the hostages as human shields, but their leader, Vexisha, periodically moves to the viewport to taunt our patrol ships. She looked directly at Carson. If we could position a shooter on an approach vector, we'd have maybe a 30-second window when Vexisha is exposed. 800 meters, moving platform. One shot, kill the leader. Boarding team rushes the door during the confusion. Your specialists are all deployed, Carson stated flatly, which is why I'm here. Tyrell's eyes scanned the room, landed on Ashford standing beside me. I heard you acquired someone yesterday, someone who shoots exceptionally. Every eye in the room turned to Ashford. She stood absolutely still, face unreadable. Carson's optical implant cycled rapidly. Recruit Ashford is not cleared for combat operations. She's cleared for basic service, Tyrell countered. And this isn't combat. This is precision marksmanship. One shot, save 12 lives, or we watch them die on video feeds for the next 4 hours. Carson looked at Ashford. You broke down 2 hours ago during a simulation. This would be real. Real stakes. Real consequences. With respect, sir, Ashford said quietly, that was simulation. The sounds reminded me of something I couldn't control, couldn't change. This is different. This is now. People will die if I don't try. Her voice remained steady, but I noticed her hands, trembling at her sides. I don't freeze when lives depend on me, she continued. I freeze when I remember failing. Let me remember succeeding instead. Carson studied her for a long moment. His mandibles clicked slowly, uncertain. The psychological evaluation in your file says I'm cleared for service, that I've processed my trauma adequately for duty. Her eyes met his. It doesn't say I'm healed, but it says I'm functional. And right now, functional is all you need. Tyrell pulled up trajectory calculations. Approach shuttle can get within 800 meters. Platform will be unstable. Orbital mechanics create relative motion. Wind isn't a factor in vacuum, but you'll be shooting through the shuttle's atmospheric envelope into hard vacuum, then through the viewport's composite material. Deflection calculations are complex but solvable, Ashford interrupted. I'll need 30 minutes to run the math. Access to atmospheric composition data, viewport material specifications, and my rifle. She paused. And I'll need someone to stabilize my shooting platform. The shuttle's vibration frequency will make precise shooting nearly impossible solo. I'll go. The voice came from the back of the room. Thexkal stepped forward. His forearms hung at his sides. His expression, usually arrogant, had shifted to something else. Something almost like shame. I'll stabilize your platform, Ashford. You focus on the shot. Carson's optical implant cycled to surprise yellow. Thexkal, you sabotaged her equipment 4 hours ago. Why would she trust you? Because I was wrong. Thexkal looked at Ashford. I thought humans were weak, emotional, unsuitable for combat roles. I tried to prove it by setting you up to fail. He paused. You didn't fail. You compensated for my sabotage through pure calculation and discipline. You showed me that strength isn't about biology. It's about refusing to break when everything says you should. His secondary arms performed a Rigelian gesture I recognized. Formal apology, usually reserved for grave offenses between warriors. I was predictable. You were exceptional. Let me help you be exceptional again. Ashford studied him, measuring, calculating, then nodded once. Okay. Tyrell didn't waste time. Shuttle departs in 20 minutes. Ashford, get your equipment. Thexkal, report to the armory for platform stabilization gear. Vexthar. I'm going too, I said, surprised myself. Someone needs to write the report when this goes sideways. Ashford almost smiled. Almost. Optimist. The approach shuttle was designed for rapid deployment, minimal comfort, maximum functionality. Strapped into the troop bay, Ashford set up her rifle with that same meticulous care I'd seen at the range. Every movement deliberate, precise, haunted. Thexkal secured the stabilization frame to the shuttle's deck. Heavy-duty magnets locked it in place. Then he positioned himself at the base, his forearms providing organic dampening for the platform's micro-vibrations. The pilot's voice crackled over comms. 8 minutes to optimal position. Target vessel on approach vector. Vexisha just moved to the viewport. He's taunting us. Probably thinks we can't touch him. Ashford loaded a single round into her rifle, chambered it with mechanical precision, then pulled out her worn notebook, the one I'd seen at the qualification range. She wasn't writing, she was reading. Pages of handwritten calculations, ballistic tables, wind charts, drop data, her father's handwriting, I realized. Teaching lessons from beyond death. You can do this, Thexkal said quietly. Not to the room, to her. I watched you compensate for my sabotage. This is the same principle, just different variables. It's not the same. Ashford's voice was barely audible. At the range, I was shooting paper. This is a person. If I miss, 12 others die. If I hesitate, they die. If I succeed, she trailed off. If you succeed, you save 12 lives, I said, including 3 children. That's not the same as what happened 8 years ago. That was an accident, a tragedy. This is a choice, an intention. You're not that 16-year-old girl supervising her brother. You're a trained specialist making a decision to protect innocence. She looked at me. How do you know it won't break me? Knowing I can kill someone deliberately. I don't, I admitted. But I know that not trying will definitely break you, because you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved them. The shuttle shuddered as it adjusted trajectory. 4 minutes to position, the pilot announced. Getting tactical feed now. 3 hostiles confirmed in command deck. Wait for, correction. Second hostile has something in his hand. Analyzing. It's a detonator. There's a bomb on the ship. Ashford's head snapped up. What? Tyrell's voice came through comms. New intel, they've planted explosives throughout the ship. If we board, they detonate. If we kill the leader without neutralizing the detonator, the second hostile triggers it anyway. We have two targets, one visible through the viewport, one partially visible, just his hand holding the detonator. That's impossible, the tactical officer said. One shot, two targets. Physics doesn't work that way. Ashford's expression changed. She accessed that place in her mind where she turned impossible into mathematics. What's the viewport made of, she asked. Ballistic composite, 18 millimeters thick, layered polymer and ceramic. Impact angle for ricochet, silence. Then Tyrell's voice uncertain. At that thickness, with a 6.5 Creedmoor round, you'd need approximately 23 degrees for reliable deflection. Ricochet angle would be around 31 degrees. Why? Ashford pulled up a schematic of the command deck on her datapad, studied it, measured distances, angles. The detonator hand is 41 centimeters left of the viewport edge. If I impact the viewport's left edge at 23 degrees, the round should ricochet at approximately 29 to 31 degrees. That puts it directly into the detonator. The computer gives that a 4% success probability, Tyrell said. The deflection variables alone, Dad always said be the 4%. Ashford closed her notebook, set it aside carefully, then settled behind her rifle. 2 minutes, the pilot called. The shuttle's bay doors opened, vacuum beyond. Ashford's position was pressurized, but I could see the transport vessel through the gap, close enough to make out details now. The damaged hull, the viewport, and through it barely visible a figure. Vexsha, the hostage-taker, former GDF. He knew exactly what he was doing, how to position himself, how to use human shields. But he didn't know about Kira Ashford, about a 24-year-old human who'd spent 8 years turning guilt into precision, who'd memorized 500 ballistic tables before she turned 14, who could calculate ricochet angles while sitting in a vibrating shuttle in orbital space. 1 minute, wind no scratch that no atmosphere, but shuttle vibration is 14 hertz. Relative velocity to target 340 meters per second. Coriolis effect in orbital mechanics 1.8 times standard. Target window 30 seconds starting now. Vexsha appeared at the viewport, gesturing, mocking. Behind him, barely visible, 3 small figures. Children. Ashford's breathing slowed. That too-controlled rhythm. Her hands trembled. Visible. Pronounced. Then steadied. Thexcal braced the platform. His forearms became organic dampeners. I've got you, he said. Focus on the shot. I pulled up tactical analysis on my datapad. The numbers were obscene. 800 meters. Moving platform. Orbital velocity differential. Ricochet shot requiring perfect angle calculation. Hitting a handheld detonator after the deflection. Computer probability 4%. Margin for error 0. Ashford acquired the target through her scope. 8 years of grief and discipline and controlled penance focused into a single moment on her face. She wasn't aiming at Vexsha directly. She was aiming at the viewport edge. Left side. Exactly where the ricochet mathematics demanded. 15 seconds, someone said. Might have been me. A child appeared in Ashford's scope, moved past Vexsha. Close, too close. I saw her hands start to shake again. Breathe, Thexcal said quietly. You're not that girl anymore. You're not holding the rifle that killed your father. You're holding the rifle that saves these children. 10 seconds. Ashford's breathing stopped. Metabolic suspension. Every physiological system optimized for this single moment. 5 seconds. Her finger touched the trigger. Not pulling, just touching. Feeling the resistance. The mechanical break point. 3 seconds. The child moved away from Vexsha. Window opened. 2 seconds. I saw Ashford's lips move, whispering something. 1 second. She fired. The rifle's report in the shuttle bay was immense, concussive. The round left the barrel at 2,700 feet per second. Flight time 2.1 seconds. Through my enhanced optical implants, the bullet crossed 800 meters of space, struck the viewport's left edge at exactly 23.4 degrees. The composite cracked. Spiderweb fractures radiated outward. The bullet deflected. 29 degrees, close enough. It crossed 41 centimeters of space in .08 seconds and struck the detonator in the second hostile's hand. The device shattered. Components scattered. "Breach now," Tyrell's voice over comms. The boarding team hit the command deck door 3 seconds later. Vexusha turned toward the commotion, away from the shattered viewport, away from his now useless plan. Tactical team flooded in, stunners fired, bodies dropped, not the hostages, the hostiles. All of them, including Vexusha. Through the cracked viewport, I caught a glimpse of something as Vexusha fell, a data pad, still displaying a file. I enhanced the image through my optical implants. Kira Ashford's personnel record, psychological evaluation, marksmanship scores. He'd known, he'd researched the human shooter, and he'd positioned himself at that viewport anyway, taunting us, believing no one in the galaxy could make an impossible ricochet shot through 18 millimeters of composite material. His last mistake was underestimating what human grief could accomplish when channeled through 8 years of obsessive practice. "Hostages secure," the team leader reported. "0 casualties. Repeat, 0 casualties." The shuttle bay erupted in cheers, celebration, relief. Ashford didn't move, didn't celebrate. She carefully engaged her rifle's safety, removed the magazine, locked the bolt back. Then she set the rifle down and collapsed. Not unconscious, just crying, sobbing. 8 years of controlled grief finally breaking through the discipline, through the mathematics, through the penance. Thexcal steadied her. His forearms became support instead of stabilization. "You did it," he said. "You saved them all." "I killed someone," Ashford gasped between sobs. "I killed someone deliberately. I aimed and I calculated and I pawned." "You saved 12 lives," I corrected. "You protected 3 children. You stopped a terrorist. You succeeded." She looked up at me, face wet, eyes red. "Then why does it feel like I just proved I'm capable of exactly what I've been terrified of for 8 years that I can kill? That I'm good at it, that my father trained me to be a weapon, and now I've become exactly that." I knelt beside her. "Your father trained you to understand precision, to respect the weight of every action, to never point a weapon at anything you weren't willing to destroy. You followed his teaching perfectly. You destroyed a threat, not a person, a threat. There's a difference, Viersfuss." "Is there?" "Yes," Carson's voice came through comms. "Because a weapon doesn't choose. You did. You could have refused, could have let someone else try, could have fired at Vexusha directly and hoped for the best. Instead, you solved an impossible problem. You found the 4% solution. That's not a weapon. That's a guardian." The shuttle began its return burn to Station Orpheus. Ashford cried the entire trip back, but she held on to her rifle, like it was the only real thing in the universe. 6 months later, I found myself back at the firing range, but not Range 7. The standard qualification range, where it all started. Ashford stood at the instructor's position. No longer recruit Ashford, Instructor Ashford now, precision marksmanship and psychological resilience specialist. 20 recruits faced her, 15 non-human, 5 human, all of them looking skeptical at the small human female with the oversized rifle. I'd seen this before. "My name is Kira Ashford," she began. Her voice was steady now, not flat, not empty, just steady. "I'm here to teach you that shooting isn't about killing. It's about control, control of your weapon, control of your environment, and most importantly, control of yourself." She held up her rifle. The same one. 47,000 rounds through this build, now probably closer to 50,000. This rifle killed my father 8 years ago, indirectly. It was in the hands of my 12-year-old brother during a training accident I was supervising. The rifle discharged, my father died. My brother took his own life 2 years later, from guilt. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't standard instructor introduction. For 6 years after that, I shot this rifle every day. Thousands of rounds, trying to earn forgiveness, trying to prove that the tragedy didn't define me, that I could be perfect, that I could control everything. She paused. "I was wrong. Perfection isn't all about control. It's about understanding that you'll never have complete control, that variables exist you can't account for, that people make mistakes, and that our job isn't to be perfect. It's to be prepared, to be disciplined, to understand the weight of what we can do." She set the rifle down carefully. 6 months ago, I made a shot that saved 12 lives. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, not because of the distance or the difficulty, but because I had to choose to take a life to save others. I had to become what I'd been terrified of becoming. And you know what I learned? And she looked at each recruit in turn, that my father didn't train me to be a weapon. He trained me to be responsible. Every trigger pull has consequences. Every shot carries weight. And if you can't accept that weight, if you can't look at your rifle and see both the lives it could take and the lives it could save, then you have no business holding it. She picked up the rifle again, showed them the case, the photo mounted inside. I carry my ghosts, my father, my brother, every mistake I made, every lesson they taught me. They make my hands steady. They make my calculations precise. They make me remember that this rifle is both terrible and necessary. One of the human recruits raised a hand, young, maybe 20. Instructor, how do you, how do you live with it, knowing you can kill? Ashford smiled, a real smile, sad but genuine. You don't live with it, you live through it. You acknowledge the weight, you respect the responsibility, and you make damn sure that every round you fire serves a purpose greater than destruction. She began setting up a demonstration. Now, who wants to learn how to read Mirage for wind estimation? The class leaned forward, eager now, engaged. Thexcal stood beside her, assistant instructor, his forearms helping set up targets, his arrogance replaced with something like humility. I watched from the observation booth, same place I'd stood 6 months ago, when this all began. My tactical analysis protocols had been running simulations, projections based on Ashford's existence and capabilities. The GDF had discovered something interesting when they started reviewing Earth databases after Ashford's mission. There were approximately 2.3 million human civilians with documented competition shooting experience, precision rifle shooters, F-class competitors, bench rest specialists, people who treated sub-MOA accuracy as a baseline expectation. 2.3 million potential Ashfords, and we'd categorize them as support personnel, technical roles, non-combat positions. We'd been measuring humans by the wrong metrics, looking at claws they didn't have, armor they'd never possessed, natural weapons that didn't exist. We'd missed the point entirely. Humans didn't need claws. They'd spent 10,000 years learning to kill things from distances where claws didn't matter. They'd refined it, industrialized it, turned it into recreation. And now they were here, in the Galactic Defense Force, bringing all that accumulated knowledge, all that cultural obsession with precision, all that stubborn refusal to accept that weakness was permanent. I pulled up my incident report from the hostage rescue, the one I'd been drafting for 6 months, the one that would change how the GDF assessed human capabilities. The closing paragraph read, Recruit Ashford represents not an anomaly but a preview. Earth's civilian shooting culture has produced millions of individuals with skills that exceed our military specialist standards. They have done this not for warfare, not for survival, but for the challenge, for the pursuit of perfection. If one human with a garage-built rifle and 8 years of grief-driven practice can revolutionize our tactical doctrine, we must ask what happens when the rest of them arrive. What happens when humans with actual military training combine their cultural background in precision marksmanship with formal combat experience? The answer should terrify every tactical planner in the galaxy. I saved the report, transmitted it to GDF's Strategic Command. Then I pulled up the security feed from Ashford's quarters, the one I probably shouldn't have access to anymore but kept anyway. She sat on her bunk, cleaning her rifle. Same ritual, same precision, but the photograph had changed. The red marker was gone. No crossed-out faces, no angry scrawl, no desperate apology. Instead, in different handwriting, not hers, just 2 words, thank you. She finished cleaning, assembled the rifle, set it aside. The photograph caught my attention one last time. I'd seen her mark it with red anger months ago, but the handwriting on it now wasn't hers. I checked the security logs. Thexcal had accessed her quarters 3 days after the mission. 37 seconds, long enough to change 3 words. From I'm sorry to thank you. Even warriors understand ghosts. Then she laid down, and for the first time since I'd been monitoring her, she slept. Peacefully, without nightmares, without staring at the ceiling until wake time. She'd set down the weight, not completely, never completely, but enough to rest, enough to breathe, enough to be something more than penance in human form. So look, here's what I learned about humans. They're not special because they're strong. They're special because they refuse to accept that weakness is permanent. Kira Ashford lost everything to a rifle, then spent 8 years turning that rifle into redemption. Every trigger pull was controlled grief. Every bullseye was proof that disaster doesn't define you, that mistakes can be learned from, that tragedy can be transmuted into purpose. The galaxy measures species by claws armor, natural weapons, by what they were born with, what evolution gave them. Humans measure themselves by what they become when they have none of those things. They turn limitations into obsessions, obsessions into mastery, mastery into doctrine. They see a problem that should be impossible, and they don't accept it. They calculate it, they practice it, they solve it through sheer stubborn dedication to the idea that nothing is truly impossible, just insufficiently practiced. That's not just impressive, that's terrifying. Because if one human with a garage-built rifle and 300,000 practice rounds can rewrite our understanding of asymmetric warfare, what happens when the rest of them show up? What happens when 2.3 million civilian shooters decide to bring their hobby to the stars? What happens when Earth starts sending us their actual military specialists, the ones who combine that cultural foundation with formal combat training? The answer is already clear. They'll do exactly what Kira Ashford did. They'll take their grief, their limitations, their disadvantages, and they'll transform them into something that makes the rest of us recalculate everything we thought we knew about warfare. She carries her ghosts. They make her aim true. And that's the most human thing I've ever seen. The refusal to let tragedy have the final word. The determination to turn loss into legacy. The stubborn insistence that redemption is always possible if you're willing to do the work. 47,000 rounds of work, 300,000 rounds of dedication, 8 years of controlled grief transformed into protective precision. That's not a soldier. That's not a weapon. That's a human, and the galaxy is about to learn what that really means.